Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the webinar on cybersecurity, protecting your small business. My name is Dolores Serafin, and I work for Alberta Agriculture, Forestry, and Rural Economic Development with the Food and Bioprocessing branch. I will be your host for today's webinar. During this 90-minute webinar, you will learn about IT security threats and how your business should be dealing with them. Sarah Kitchin with KPMG will be presenting an introduction for small to medium-sized agriculture and food businesses looking to be proactive in protecting their data and information from outside sources from cyberspace or the internet. Application of digital and automation technology is increasing in importance for small to medium-sized companies today, and this webinar will provide insightful information, best practices, and tips on how to effectively manage this technology and the potential cybersecurity threats that could be placed on your business. This webinar will cover these main topics. Why is cybersecurity important? Common threats, conducting a cyber inventory, and cyber risk management and best practices. Before we start though, here are a few housekeeping items. If you would like to ask a question, please click on the Q&A symbol at the top of your screen. I will make sure our presenters address all of the questions at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and the link will be sent to you in an email after the live event. Our webinar today is scheduled for 90 minutes. We are anticipating approximately 75 minutes of presentation time and 15 minutes for questions at the end. Our presenters today are Sarah Kitchin with KPMG, joined by panelist Calvin Lee with IRAP Cybersecurity Program. Sarah has over 15 years experience with implementing enterprise risk projects and working as a cybersecurity professional. As a cybersecurity professional, she specializes in governance risk and compliance, GRC for short, and IT security. Her skills include advising on cybersecurity maturity, business resiliency, risk management, information technology operations, and eGRC toolset integration, for example, Archer. Calvin Lee, who is our panelist, is an industrial technology advisor, ITA for short, with the National Research Council's Industrial Research Assistance Program, also known as the NRC IRAP. NRC IRAP works to help small to medium-sized enterprises innovate and grow. One of the ways that they do this is to provide some support for companies seeking to improve their cybersecurity preparedness, and Calvin is on the team that helps deliver this program. Prior to joining IRAP, Calvin had a long career in the private sector, including being responsible for the IT and telecommunications infrastructure for a North American-wide company with over 70 locations to keep secure. Calvin has built some software applications to support farm equipment dealerships. I will now hand it over to Sarah, who will start us out on our wonderful journey today.
Hi, thanks very much. Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. So today I'm going to present information around agricultural technology, the use of technology involving Internet of Things, and the cybersecurity relationship within the agricultural sector. I'll most likely touch on some agricultural subject matter that you're familiar with, but hopefully I will leave you with some new insights and awareness around securing your business from cybersecurity attacks. So let's get started. So as I said before, I do work with KPMG, and I'm a manager with our cybersecurity team. And I really like to help clients with building out their cybersecurity programs, improving their cybersecurity posture, maturity processes, raising awareness on the constantly changing technology landscape, and of course, helping organizations understand associated threats and vulnerabilities. But most importantly, I enjoy helping clients leverage business enabling technologies in a secure and safe and trustworthy way. So ag tech, this is the future of food and agriculture. It incorporates involving methods and research on managing production and processes. So one persistent target of conducting agricultural research is to improve yields and quality. However, the target becomes seriously challenging with the increasing population of the world. For example, various food safety problems or pitfalls such as pesticide overuse, ecological damage, and transgenic techniques. These are inherent problems and can be encountered when trying to meet such high demand. So ag tech adopts new agricultural technology methods to include digitization and finding efficiencies on how to manage crops and livestock products, for example, field crops, forage, fruits, vegetables, horticultural specialties, cattle, sheep, hogs, goats, horses, poultry, fur-bearing animals, milk, seeds, eggs, and furs, bees. I think I've listed a lot. Anyways, you get the idea here. So that sustainability of agriculture combined with ag tech has attracted increasing attention in the media. And yet historically, it's not been a notable target for cyber criminals, but it is now. So the agricultural sector carries significant importance, not only because it provides much of our daily food, but because it's the base of many industries and much of Canada's trade and commerce. Agriculture is our most important single industry and accounts for a large portion of employment statistics too. So there are many important changes in the sector, which include these areas: large farms. So these are evolving to become increasingly sophisticated businesses that harmonize automation, modernization, and production operations. Next is smaller business and small and medium-sized enterprise farms. And the changes include the impacts from consolidation of these areas, and the recent pandemic has led to significant changes in rural landscapes and profiles of these Canadian regions. Then we have to consider the next generation. So according to StatsCan, farms classified as oilseed and grain farming, the largest proportion of farms in Canada, accounted for the largest share of farms reporting a succession plan in 2021. So the reality is that our farmers are aging and looking to sell their land, since the younger generation may not have an appetite to become farmers themselves. Also, there are issues around industry consolidation and higher land values, which means that there could be fewer farms and farm operators. Alternatively, and I found this is really interesting, is the number of female operators has increased for the first time since 1991. Which is nice. Finally, we have sustainability. Practices that cope with climate change are the drivers for sustainability. Technology use is a growing trend in agriculture because it improves the accuracy and efficiency of existing farm processes and renewable energy. So overall, technology helps farms to stay competitive in managing the expectations around a growing global market and labor shortages. Climate change has also changed the traditional lessons and experience from our farming history. So now questions that often come to mind are how to reduce the carbon footprint, renewable energy, and what technology can be used to measure it. We're told that greenhouse gas, GHG emissions, continue to increase in Canada, with the agricultural sector contributing to approximately 10% of this. Population growth and demand for increased production of food is also tied to the GHG increase. And there's no one solution to effectively mitigate GHG emissions in all regions of Canada. And this is because there are different challenges and capacities required for businesses in the agricultural sector to address their GHG emissions. And the results are that expectations to reduce a carbon footprint becomes complex because of the many companies and government areas that make up Canada's agri-food chain, and they're independent. In Alberta, there's an expectation to adopt an agricultural practice improvement to create our carbon offsets and reduce greenhouse gases. However, producers may not use these offsets simply because of the large amounts of paperwork, few resources, and small economic benefit. So technology can help provide large amounts of data to help answer these complex questions around the carbon footprint. But what happens when this data is manipulated and stolen? So let's pause for a moment. One of the things that I find interesting about these new technologies is that they're available to individual consumers who are not farmers, gardeners, or even horticulturalists. Being a brown thumb, I can now buy a high-tech system that is marketed as being more self-reliable, allows me to eat organic and grow chemical-free herbs and vegetables. These gardens, they have plug-and-play features and come with built-in cameras and sensors to monitor the crops on a continual basis in my house, of course. And they can be controlled via an Android or an iPhone app, and even contain salient features such as cloud technologies that have customized shipping containers. I was gifted one of these herb gardening systems a year ago, and I grew the best dill and basil in the neighborhood. At least that's what I believe. And so much so that I was handing it out to everyone and anyone who came to me within a safe and socially distanced manner, of course. Then I went out of the country for 2 weeks and everything died because I didn't have the smart feature model. So there you go, I can grow weeds, dill. Anyways, my point is, my point here is that even home gardening has become smart, cost effective, and automated using the very same tech that we're seeing in commercial scale farming. So before going deep into ag tech and real-time security threats, it's important to understand a few technical terms around the technology. So industrial control systems. So ICS is a collection of various types of control systems and instruments. This includes devices, systems, networks, and controls used to operate and automate industrial processes. For example, supervisory control and data acquisition, or SCADA, and distributed control systems. So operational technology and cyber physical systems. Operational technology, or commonly referred to as OT, is a term that defines a specific category of hardware and software whose purpose is to monitor and control the performance of physical devices. So it deals with industrial operations where a sensor connected to a programmable logic controller, or PLC, or another industrial mechanism collects output data and sends it to the service provider, for example, the farmer, for further analysis. It involves task-specific systems that are tailored to the needs of particular industries. And these systems also support mission-critical operations. And those are considered high-value targets by bad actors. CPS, just to speak on that quickly, it's a collection of systems which interact with physical assets through cyber environments. The Internet of Things and Industrial Internet of Things. IoT products provide a value and convenience, which is delivered to end users through a public cloud-based service. For example, some homes use a temperature monitor called Nest, and that is what you could consider an IoT. IoT endpoint devices, for example, sensors, connect to an edge gateway, which then connects to cloud services. Applications are also part of the IoT family. Therefore, both physical and software IoT is included when considering agricultural industry threats. For example, a GPS machine is an IoT device, and so is the software written for the GPS machine. And Industrial Internet of Things, or IIoT, incorporates technologies such as machine learning, machine-to-machine communication. And remember this machine-to-machine communication, because this becomes very important later on. Sensor data, big data, etc. So why is the use of IoT in agriculture so important? And that would be efficiency. The weather readings and low resolution satellite images that farmers have long loved just don't cut it these days. It's difficult to manually go around and collect data when you grow in volume over large geographic dispersal of farmland in rural areas too. Computer scientists and agronomists, hopefully I said that right, like to monitor crop growth in order to optimize it. And the focus is on hyper-local climate data. So low-cost sensors can obtain temperature and humidity data. Low-cost cameras can measure light, radiation, and gather valuable images. It can be used to detect crop diseases and dispatch personnel to address them. Pardon me, I'm just gonna take a drink here. This tech can provide alerts on when to prune and harvest, and of course it helps offset labor shortages. So far we know that IoT is being used to replace the traditional farming infrastructure with smart infrastructure. And ag tech can be broken down into two main categories: smart farming and precision agriculture. They're both referred to as modern technology, and this includes using IoT devices, drones, robotics, and artificial intelligence that are specifically for the control and management of farms, production, and associated sector operations. And the technology is being used to improve productivity and yield while reducing input, land, and labor requirements. So smart farming. This focuses on capturing data and interpreting it via technology, so your mobile devices to access real-time data about condition of soil and plants, terrain, climate, weather, resource usage, manpower, funding, and that helps you to make informed decisions. Farm operations can be more predictable and efficient, and its application of information and data technology is typically used for optimizing complex farming systems. A typical multi-layer smart farming architecture consists of the cloud, network communication, edge, and physical layers, which are used to connect to various smart IoT devices, such as sensors and actuators, as well as CPS, to each other and to the internet. So it's quite complicated, and lots of areas to take advantage of. Precision agriculture is distinct from smart farming in that it refers to a technology-enabled approach to farming management that precisely observes, measures, and analyzes the needs of individual fields and crops. So the differences within a field or between individual animals, for example. And this approach also aims at optimizing such areas as fertilizer usage, saving costs, and reducing environmental impacts by leveraging various types of data. And because precision agriculture is sensitive and accurate, accidental or intentionally changing the data or manipulating the control system can lead to damaging valuable resources. So here's some smart ag tech key points. The feedback extracted from the industrial environment may serve as an indication to properly calibrate a heater, pump controller, and pressure balances, etc. And this leads to optimization, partially or wholly, of particular operational processes and more accurate fault detection. And then it has features that allow for visualization, data logging, passing of data, and real-time control. And something to note that modern SCADA equipment, ICS, is starting to resemble IoT technology. And this is very important because we can think about old and new now emerging. And unfortunately, IoT-based technologies are presenting new cybersecurity vulnerabilities and cyber threats to the agricultural sector. For example, as I indicated before, these vulnerabilities can be easily exploited to gain control of on-field actuators, sensors, and autonomous vehicles such as tractors, drones, and sprayers and planters. And finally, data. And data is a highly lucrative target for bad actors, and especially the data on critical infrastructures. For example, an unauthorized change to data or disruption to the data network chain can deceive a farmer into making changes that negatively influence the health of a herd. Poor cows or chickens, depending if he's a chicken farmer. So here's some cybersecurity perspectives. Cyber attacks on the agriculture infrastructure can have significant and longer-term consequences. For example, a stoppage or slowdown during harvest season can reverberate throughout the entire industry as food processing plants and distribution networks feel the effects of events that may have happened weeks or months earlier. Or where seizing operations could cut off feed supply for animals and in turn cut meat processing, dairy production, and other associated functions. And retail stores such as farmers markets and restaurants are impacted because they need an easily accessible and reliable source of food products. So cyber attacks will cause financial loss resulting from the ransomware payments. For example, if they were cyber attacked and had ransomware installed, loss of productivity. There's remediation costs. In addition to that ransomware, there's loss of proprietary information and there is reputational damage. So why target agriculture? So the food and agricultural sector is a critical industry and carries a large attack surface. And larger agricultural businesses are targeted because they can afford to pay higher ransoms. The smaller ones are also targeted because of their inability to afford high quality cybersecurity. So according to recent research by Palo Alto Networks in 2021, 57% of IoT devices are vulnerable to medium or high severity attacks. And this makes IoT the low-hanging fruit for attackers. The #1 global IoT connections will triple to 25 billion by 2025, so 3 years from now, while global IoT revenue will quadruple to $1.1 trillion. Intelligent connectivity will be the catalyst for socio-economic growth with an estimated $13.2 trillion of global economic value, and that will be reached by 2035. 98% of all IoT device traffic is unencrypted, exposing personal and confidential data on the network and allowing attackers the ability to listen to unencrypted network traffic, collect personal information or confidential information, and then exploit that data for profit on the dark web. Global spending on smart agriculture tech is expected to reach $15.3 billion US by 2025. And in 2021, Canada launched a $165.7 million program to provide clean tech to farmers and agribusinesses. You see the trajectory here. 41% of attacks exploit device vulnerabilities, and as IT-borne attacks scan through network-connected devices in an attempt to exploit known weaknesses, organizations have to keep up with knowing what their vulnerabilities are. And 72% of LANs, so VLANs, it's a collection of devices or network nodes that communicate with one another. Remember that machine-to-machine comment I made earlier? This is what we're talking about. And these VLANs mix IoT and IT assets, and that allows malware to spread from users' computers to vulnerable IoT devices on the same network. And this is a top IoT threat. So here's a timeline from 2021. I really want to point out or have you look at this and notice that the September, October months, and these ones are just notable recent ransomware attacks. They're not all of them, and often organizations fail to report attacks. We just don't have a full and comprehensive data set on this. However, just remember that September, October timeframe, and I'm not a farmer, but that seems like a significant time. So let's talk about the JBS meats. They ended up paying $11 million US in Bitcoin ransom to Russian cyber attack agents called Revel, who encrypted their files. And JBS spends approximately $200 million annually on IT and employs more than 850 IT professionals globally. So they're quite the powerhouse. A new cooperative is an Iowa-based farm service provider, and they were hit with a ransomware attack, Black Matter, and a $5.9 million USD ransom was demanded for that one. I don't know whether they paid it or not. They did not provide an update, and I couldn't find one. Crystal Valley, based in Minnesota, had its payment systems attacked 2 days later, and they had to do some fancy accounting and change their September, October billing cycles and delay their payment due dates. I don't know what the full scale and cost of that attack was, but seems pretty significant to me since their payment systems were compromised. And then we have Schraber Foods, and they suffered, hopefully I pronounced that right, but they suffered a ransomware attack that shut down their milk plants. Again, the cost wasn't disclosed, and full impact is still, I think it's still in discovery. I don't have any more information on that one either. But you kind of get the idea of optimal times, and large organizations, even though they're large and they have all this money to throw at their IT and whatnot, you can still see that they get compromised. So there's significant gaps, unique situations in attack services. For example, like global IoT, the pandemic, and trust. And trust being that we have a lot of security, privacy, and interoperability issues. In terms of security risks when using these technologies, many efforts and research efforts have concentrated on security by design. And it's still, these attacks still happen. And aside from ransomware, which is really exploiting vulnerabilities in order to encrypt or bring down networks and demand a ransom, there are other cyber attacks that are included in this landscape. We have phishing, which is a form of social engineering. We have third party, so these are vendors, partners who don't incorporate healthy cybersecurity practices. Supply chain attacks, which is a disruption in the food chain, or, for example, hijacking an infrastructure, an IT network infrastructure for shipping. And this has happened quite significantly in the past year, where shipping companies have had to shut down their operations and have had to circumvent those shutdowns to help keep the supply running. There's cryptojacking, and this is where devices are used to mine cryptocurrency. And there's cyber physical, which is essentially locking employees out of buildings by hijacking card key locks. They're state-sponsored, which is foreign countries trying to disrupt critical infrastructure and political motivation. There's endpoint attacks, which is hacking into the sensors and the mobile surfaces and employee access. And of course, machine learning driven attacks in AI. So what does an attack stage look like? This is kind of this goes through the series of steps that a bad actor would take. They're not all encompassing. They can happen in different stages. It just depends on the robustness of your cybersecurity and how easily they can get in. But I'll go through each of the stage. So the first one is Reconnaissance, and this is where the attacker starts to identify and profile the victim via gathering as much information as possible. Simply like social engineering, think of it that way. The next step is the weaponization. And this is where the attacker designs and implements the remote access malware. This is called the weapon, and tailor it to the vulnerabilities of the victim. So they assess your vulnerabilities and they use it. Next one is delivery, and this is where the attacker launches the remote access malware into the victim or onto the victim, and that could be your organization or individually. And an example would be if they came in and plugged in a USB device, or more commonly, what we know of is an email attachment or a link to a website, and we click on them. The next one is installation, and this is where the attacker tries to get permanent access to the victim via installing proper command and control servers. This is called C2. Very smart. The next stage is exploitation, and this is where the attacker utilizes remote access malware to action on the victim and related network in order to exploit that vulnerability that they discovered. And then there's the command and control, where the attacker communicates with the C2 server in order to control the victim. And then finally, the attacker, under where the actions and objectives are, the attacker completes the attack scenario and achieves the final goal of compromising the victim. So here's some core information security concepts. Most systems house information that has some degree of sensitivity, and this is where confidentiality matters. So it might be proprietary business information that competitors could use to their advantage, or personal information regarding an organization's employees, customers, or clients. Confidential information often has value in systems and are therefore under frequent attack as criminals hunt for vulnerabilities to exploit in this area. Threat vectors include direct attacks such as stealing passwords and capturing network traffic, and more layered attacks such as social engineering and phishing. Password access control lists and authentication procedures use software to control access to resources. These access control methods are complemented by the use of encryption and protect information that can be accessed, despite the controls such as emails that are in transit. And integrity, putting integrity measures in place can protect information from unauthorized alteration. So these measures provide assurance in the accuracy and completeness of data. And the need to protect information includes both data that is stored on the systems and data that is transmitted between systems, such as email. In maintaining integrity, it's not only necessary to control access at the system level, but to further ensure that system users are only able to alter information that they're legitimately authorized to alter. So there's many countermeasures that can be put in place to protect integrity. Access control and rigorous authentication can help prevent authorized users from making unauthorized changes. Hash verifications and digital signatures can help ensure that transactions are authentic and that files have not been modified or corrupted. And equally important to protecting data integrity are administrative controls, such as separation of duties and training. We look at availability. Availability measures protect timely and uninterrupted access to the system. So some of the most fundamental threats to availability are non-malicious in nature and include hardware failures, unscheduled software downtime, and network bandwidth issues. Malicious attacks include various forms of sabotage intended to cause harm to an organization by denying users access to the information system. The availability and responsiveness of a website is a high priority for many businesses. So disruption of website availability for even a short time can lead to a loss of revenue and customer dissatisfaction and reputational damage. Non-repudiation. This concept can apply to any activity, not just to sending and receiving of data. In a more general sense, it's a mechanism to prove that an activity was performed and by whom. So non-repudiation is typically comprised of authentication, auditing, logging, and cryptography services. A common application of this service would be digital signing of email messages to prove that the message received was actually sent by the purported sender. And then trust. How should people, machines, and networks establish trust in reliable ways? How does trust relationship change over time? In M2M systems, machine-to-machine systems, trust is commonly accomplished using cryptography, digital signatures, and electronic certificates. This approach establishes and evaluates a trust chain between devices, but it doesn't tell us enough about the quality of information being exchanged among machines. So an essential part of managing trust and security in the age of the IoT is identity management for the machine. For example, non-human or a robot, as you saw at the beginning of this presentation, and those are the participants in that area. So I like this analogy, and hopefully you'll understand my analogy here. Just like the movie Inception, which is a complex story, and I'm not sure if all of you guys have seen this movie, but anyways, it's a story based around a thief who steals corporate secrets through the use of dream sharing technology. And IoT introduces new challenges in identity management in things that have different lifetimes, ranging from years or decades down to days or minutes. And in things that may be composed of other things, creating a system of systems. And in things are mobile, meaning they can take on the address once associated with another device, and they could have more than one IP address. I know that sounds like a lot, and I will call it IoTception. It's very, very complex, and it's essential that we trust that we're talking to the right thing, and that we can believe the data and we can believe that whatever data it communicates to us. So in summary, the absence of proper provisioning for these security concepts that I've just explained may expose the smart farming and precision agriculture to a variety of attacks that may exploit these environments and related smart information systems, or cause harm, stealth, unauthorized change, or destruction of them. Let's talk about zero trust. The term zero trust has taken on multiple meanings as vendors scramble to take advantage of this high interest level. The definition taken from the National Institute of Standards and Technology otherwise known as NIST, is likely the most accepted explanation. And this is what it is. It's zero trust is the term for an evolving set of cybersecurity paradigms that move defenses from static network-based perimeters to focus on users, assets, and resources. And zero trust assumes there is no implicit trust granted to assets or user accounts based solely on their physical or network location. So with zero trust, authentication and authorization are discrete functions that cybersecurity teams perform before granting access to any digital resources. So this happens in the background. That's what that means. So it's becoming far more important in the age of a remote hybrid work environment with the rise in cloud services integration and, of course, the use of mobile devices. And the best way to understand business vulnerabilities and threat landscape, or to just improve your security posture, is to perform a cyber maturity assessment. And this is my area. I love this. A cyber maturity, this is an example of ours, the KPMG's. A cyber maturity assessment can be quite the undertaking. We have 9 areas of focus, and it's requested for all types of reasons. Compliance, risk posture, changing environment, and it can be quite costly depending on your company size and complexity. So I'll talk about each of these areas. Leadership and governance, this is like your cyber strategy and your planning, your roles and responsibilities, your leadership, and your informed governance. And then we have security operations. These are Security Operations Center, or commonly known as a SOC, and the governance around that. Any other additional SOC functions, logging, threat management and intelligence, incident management, monitoring and engineering, and security information event management. So that's a SIM, and that's often used in cybersecurity setups. The next one is we assess your technical security. So this is a large area, and it's not limited to the examples that I'm going to explain to you or the complexity of your organization, but here's a few, maybe a little more than a few. Physical and environmental security, so you assess that. You look at your cloud security, your cloud usage, the data disposal and security, your patch management, your identity and access management, your mobile device management, connected devices and IoT falls in here, your infrastructure and platform and endpoints also fall in this one. And then you would assess your compliance. So that means your regulatory and certifications. Again, you would look at your roles and responsibilities, your independence challenge, your cyber insurance, and then of course your general principles. You would assess, next one is the resilience. And this is pretty important. A lot of organizations typically have a good start on this, but it's very important to see this one end to end. So from top to bottom, bottom to up, and that everybody is aware. So resilience consists of your business continuity in case of a disruption. Your BC, and it's called like a BCP or BCP plan. Your IT disaster recovery, disaster resumption plans, business resilience, your crisis management, your incident management, of course, testing it and training. Security architecture is very important as well. So we would check your alignment, your architecture design, your architecture strategy and governance. And then follow that by information and risk management. This is another key area. We would look at your risk assessment, your risk management, your risk treatment, your data life cycles, classification, labeling, and your business impact assessments. Your roles and responsibilities are also in here, and general principles. And speaking of risk, it's very important to see risk integrated and risk thoughts and processes, integrated end to end, again, top down, horizontally. This is especially important when it comes to change management, or you're wanting to adopt a new technology and you don't know a lot about it. Might be wise before you adopt that to do some research and figure out if it breaks, if it's compromised, what's that impact? How much are you going to rely on that? The next one would be human factors. So this is where you would look at your people and security. What is your culture like? Is it security focused? Are there any special security skills and competencies that you have on staff or that you have yourself? Your background checks, your capability management, and of course training. Last but not least is third party, and this is your vendor management, your data management, your business processes for outsourcing, your policy management, your processes, your just outsourcing in general. These are all really important because you may feel like you are being very good with your cybersecurity practices and that you feel you are secure. But if you rely on vendors or you rely on another person and they're sharing data with you, especially, that can be a point of vulnerability, for you. So a CMA can be performed on all sizes of organizations, and they don't have to be as complex, or they could be complex if we think of JBS. But again, it just depends on what you need. And often we have organizations and businesses approach us to assess one or a few of the areas within this whole CMA methodology. Typically, it's their highest pain points or somewhere where they've made a lot of changes and they need to assess it properly or get an outside perspective. And by doing just high pain points, you can also reduce costs when it comes to doing a full cyber maturity assessment. We also do assessment of maturity levels, and assessing maturity levels helps organizations benchmark themselves and provides baselines for improvements. And this is really quite nice because you could be looking at your cybersecurity this year, and then you could be making improvements next year, or have a plan, and then you want somebody to come in and assess you against the year before. And this is really nice because it creates a history. And it's usually repeated yearly and or more frequently, depending on how often you change. But again, the complexity is highly dependent on your appetite and your legislative requirements and your investment capabilities. Without doing a CMA, having a few fundamentals in place will also help improve your overall security posture. And, like I said, it depends on what you're willing to invest in your cybersecurity. But here's some good tips. First of all, you should try to know what your asset footprint looks like and what you can control. So think about your cyber maturity for the following potential attacks. Your hardware, so your technical security and your human. Think about your network and your related equipment, and this is your technical part. Think about your data, your technical security, so what's housing that data, but also your human, and then your information systems, so your databases, but who has access to those databases. Think about the code that's being used, or if you're developing your own code. Think about the support chain, and that means your third-party vendors or your partnerships that you have. And of course, there's the misuse, and that is the human factor, and that's pretty important. That's usually a common area and easily exploitable. When you do a CMA or assess your cyber maturity, it's pretty straightforward. There are stages that are typically used for when performing one. This is a common method is typically you would start off by planning. So this is where you would scope out your requirements and plan out like what your schedule is for doing this, and who's involved, and what your expected outcomes are. We typically work with a single point of contact, and that helps keep the communication lines clear. And if we're doing it, that person on the client side would be in charge of bringing the right people in and gathering evidence for us. And of course, we would sit down and work out project related matters, so schedule and when to do stuff, and frequency of like updating. And then the field work is really just oops, my bad, jumping ahead here. The field work is really just a series of interviews, and we ask questions. And it depends if you're looking at, improving your cybersecurity against industrial control standards or frameworks, or if you're just, you have a group of 10 of you who are running the business, and we just want to ask you questions. What are your assets? What do you use to set the rules? And what are you doing to make sure that like your devices are updated, and that firmware, your IoT devices firmware, for example, is important, and you have to keep that updated. We would ask for proof to support what you're saying and what you believe is happening. And then what we would do is we create working papers, and that just basically measures against like industry standard controls or frameworks, or if you're actually having to certify yourself, there's audit support functions involved in that as well. And then you would get a report, and this report would help you understand what was observed. If there's any previous year comparisons, that would go in there. Ratings, and that's again going back to that maturity rating, the 1 through 5, like where you stand in that in the various areas, any recommendations, and of course future state roadmaps for implementation. And then a presentation. And again, some of this applies, some of this doesn't apply, and you can kind of pick where you think would be a good way of understanding where you are in all of this. But essentially, the debrief is really a report, and of course, it can involve next stage planning, for improvements. If you wanted help fixing stuff, this is where this would come in. So while we know that this may not be feasible for every small business or owner or farmer to be an expert at technology, and especially at cybersecurity threats in agriculture, there are some common cyber safe behaviors that you can perform to reduce a security risk. So these are your takeaways, really, your pre-takeaways. So avoid suspicious emails, links, and saving personal or financial information on browsers and autofill features. An example of when I say avoid suspicious links, it simply can mean that if you get an email and it just seems off, trust that instinct. You can actually mouse over certain links within an email and see if it looks legit. And what I mean by legit is, does it really align with what's being said and who's it from? If it has a spelling mistake, or the .com is a .ru, for example, those are indicators that maybe you just should hit delete and don't click on it. Incorporate multi-factor authentication where possible. Multi-factor authentication is just another step and another layer to help secure your interactions. And you can get a lot of free apps for your phone that will provide authentication, multi-factor authentication, and will sync up with various areas, commonly used apps like Amazon, for example. Only make your data-driven decisions when you know your systems are actually secure. So if you're relying on a lot of data, keep in mind that that data may have been compromised. So you have to make sure that you know that this is the right stuff. Be wary of long weekends, especially if you have IT staff or you use a managed services or you hire someone. Typically they're gone. They're with their families or they're taking it off. And that leaves you vulnerable. And that's a time, an opportune time for a bad actor to come along and say, hey, this is a good time to go in and do our damage. Search for signs of compromise before these long weekends. That means that, leading up to this stuff, it could be that a bad actor has already compromised your systems, has gone in, set themselves up, and these are signs are typically found in logs. Being a small business, you may not have that capacity, but it would be something to consider looking into if this is your money, this is your value, this is your livelihood, these are important things that you need to protect. Create an action plan in case you are attacked. What are you going to do? How are you going to resume your operations? Are you stuck? Do you have like an alternative way of communicating to your clients? I'll give you a great example. I have a friend who has a small business, not in agriculture, but she was relying on Instagram to post videos, post sales, post services that she offered, and her account got hacked. They took over. They tried to demand money from her to give access to her account back, but really she had to walk away. She had a long list of followers and ones that were very important to her, and she had no way of reaching out to them to say, hey, this is fake. So, this fake account now, or this one that was compromised, has all of her followers thinking it's her, and it's that easy. So again, create your action plan. Not only farmers should be aware of cybersecurity threats, but again, various stakeholders along that food production chain, and they have to be cognizant of the risks as well. So that means talking, like, tell me about your service. How secure are you? Why should I buy your technology? How do you handle cybersecurity? Ask those kind of questions. And of course, sharing your data with trusted advisors, researchers, suppliers, and buyers. These are often things that happen. And again, that those cyber safe behaviors, they have to be encouraged throughout the whole entire data ecosystem. Your physical access controls and other physical secure physical behaviors can also reduce that security risk. So inspect and maintain your devices regularly and to prevent environmental and personal complications that could obscure those security measures. Create your backups of data. That helps reduce impact severity and when your data is stolen, or if your access is all of a sudden denied. And this could be timely, especially for farmers. They can't access any of their systems. They don't know if that poor sick cow in the field A is still walking, or if he's decided to take a long rest. You just don't know if your access is denied, and you rely on that so much. Protect your sensitive information and your documents, your devices. Place them in secure spaces like locked cabinets, rooms, or even offsite caches. Offsite, I love offsite because it disperses and it keeps everything separate. So you're not completely stuck or taken down in this case. Just make sure that you're reviewing it frequently. You're not locking old files that are like 20 years old. Like your frequency is up to date. And of course, blockchain technology has been applied to some architectures, and that's used to ensure data privacy and security, as well as fault tolerance. And blockchain and fault tolerance is really excellent stuff. So it's not a, not a full, complete takedown. It's just it can be like segmented, and access control and third-party removal is really important. So you're no longer with that third party, take them out. There's no need to hang on to them. If they're not there to help service your business, just get rid of them. Keep what you have to keep, but really just don't hang on to it. Some key takeaways from our discussion today. We do know that smart farming and precision agriculture continue to change that landscape, and they will help enhance global food security and reduce environmental impacts. It's also important to recognize that these potential technologies need to be protected from cyber attacks. From the statistics and research that I presented earlier, it's clear that there's plenty of cyber attacks and security threats that exist on an upward trajectory. And these attacks can impose serious disruptions to global and local markets, especially in areas such as Alberta, in which there's a strong economy, and that's heavily based on the agricultural sector. And for those of you who have fallen asleep during my long, wordy talk, there is an exam. So I just wanted to point that out. I will be asking you all questions on this. I'm just kidding. That's it for me. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you so much, Sarah. I will now hand it over to Calvin to share his presentation. I'm just giving him authority to share his screen, which hopefully should happen in a moment. There we go. So welcome aboard, Calvin, and please share.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing those those words of wisdom. Just a quick introduction here. So I am. I'm trying to advance my slide. Is what I'm trying to do. There we go. So I'm part of the National Research Council. This is what we do. I'm part of the little circle on the far right there. I'm part of the IRAP group, and I work with a lot of small, medium-sized companies to support them, to help them innovate and help them to grow. Okay. This is our mandate and mission, and really we want to do what needs to be done, right? And sometimes that is helping people with research and development. Sometimes that is helping them make sure that they are secured, so that they, so that no one can steal what they've, what they've worked hard to get. So just again, to really reiterate this, this is really important. It's recognized at a national level when the Minister of National Defense is saying this is serious, right? Just this week, they're actually talking about Bill C-26, which is a new law, new regulations specifically to address cybersecurity, and it's meant to, it's meant to protect Canadians and bolster cybersecurity across mainly the key infrastructure industries like financial, telecom, energy, transportation, right? So it is being recognized certainly as a big issue, and there's a lot of different people in the community, in government, trying to address this because it is a big problem, and a lot of Canadians lose a lot of wealth this way. So a few trends, I think Sarah has touched on a few of these, but cyber attacks have increased a lot. I think especially since the pandemic caused people to lock down and stop going places. The criminals have discovered that there's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of value online, and that's where they've been focusing a lot more efforts on their attacks. Why do they like small, medium companies? You think you see the big attacks in the newspaper, like the Colonial Pipeline and the JPS, but small companies are also a target of attack. And 1 in 5 is likely to suffer something, a serious attack. And a lot of times it's because they're easier targets, right? They don't have to work as hard to beat the 800 cybersecurity professionals in order to break into that big company. They can just hit a lot of smaller companies, get in a lot easier, and you might get, the payout is smaller. You're not going to ransom a small company for $11 million, but you can ransom 100 different small companies, right, and make up that difference, right? In Canada, at IRAP, we've actually noticed that it seems that Canada is one of the favorite targets. Canadian small companies are one of the favorite targets. Personally, I think that's because we have a fairly trusting society. But in the business of cybersecurity, we really need to be more suspicious and skeptical, and to protect ourselves. Getting hit is hard, right? Not only have to pay the ransom, you have to recover your business, and that is a very difficult thing to do. Just to get a sense, I mean, it's a huge problem. Everyone kind of knows that it is a big problem. We don't really know the scale of it quite yet, because a lot of it, as Sarah said, a lot of it does go hidden. Even if you get attacked and you pay the ransom, you may not want to share that with your customers. So I just want to go through a few different examples and try to provide you with the perspective from that smaller business. What does it mean, if you're not running a multi-million-dollar national operation, or maybe if you are, right? So, and this, I try to find examples that are as recent as possible. So one example here in April, right, the FBI actually issued a warning specifically for the ag sector, right, co-ops, planting and harvesting, and they are, I mean, specifically they are targeting you to disrupt operations. They're trying to hit you, when you're most likely to be paying, right? They're in this to make money, and they want to hit you at a point where you're most vulnerable and most likely to say, yeah, okay, fine, just take the money, just give me my systems back, right? Best way to protect against this, I mean, you have to be ready for it. So whatever IT systems you have to keep them up to date, right? People discover new vulnerabilities in software, in hardware, frequently, and the manufacturers will release these updates to say, okay, now I got to fix that hole, now I got to fix that hole. So you need to keep maintain that and can keep that up to date. Right, using the latest antivirus software. There is software out there, but you need to keep it, again, you need to keep it up to date. Make sure it's the latest version at all times. Sarah mentioned this, use multi-factor authentication. It just makes your accounts a little bit harder to break into. Okay, and also if if the worst case scenario, right, if your system does get broken into and the bad actors kind of lock you out of your system, make sure you have a backup plan, right? What are you going to do? How can you operate manually, right, when your autonomous tractor locks you out because someone changed the keys on you, right? So you have a plan for that. Just kind of have a good sense of what you might be able to do. So always important to have that plan B. Okay. This is an incident that happened in Saskatchewan. And of course, they picked Christmas Day to attack because, again, right, they want to hit you when they know it's going to hurt you the most. So times in and around planting, harvest, Christmas, right? When in this case, right? I mean, they couldn't ship product, right? And they want to hit you when you're the most vulnerable, when you're most likely to say, oh, fine, just take the money, pay the ransom, just to get your systems back when you're that desperate. Right. Sarah mentioned a lot of these things here. Backups, keep them in a safe place. Locked cabinet is a really good place because they can't reach that over the internet. Right. Emails, a lot of these cyber attacks start with a suspicious looking email. Right. You click on that link thinking that it is an invoice from a customer or a message from Microsoft or something, right? Something that looks, I better click on that. And suddenly you're taken somewhere else that you didn't expect to be, and they're trying to trick you out of the ability to access your system. Right. Also, I mean, as you probably hear from Sarah's talk, right? Cybersecurity is complex. There are a lot of moving pieces, a lot of interdependent systems that work with each other. So it is really complex. I mean, if you do get hit, you know absolutely bring in some experts to help you recover. I mean, there are experts that will help you negotiate, you know, with the ransomware, you know, the cyber criminals as well. So you know, don't try to do it yourself at that point. Another one here, a Canadian company, you know, grain farming. There's a man-in-the-middle attack, and this is when they, when the bad actor, right, that cyber criminal pretends to be someone that you know. So in this case, they pretended that they were one of these suppliers in India, and convinced them to say, well, I changed my banking information. You know, could you please update my banking information to this account when you pay my invoice next time, right? So if you trust that person, you think that it's your real supplier, right? But you've just updated their banking information. Suddenly, when you pay invoices, it's going off and disappearing, right? Because it's been rerouted to the bad actor's account, and then suddenly your supplier is going to call you up and say, hey, why haven't you been paying me, right? So, I mean, one of the things here is a protocol, right? What happens here? What is your protocol? What is your process when you get an important request? Right? One of the best things that you do is, if the request comes over email, you'll pick up the phone, call them, right? Make sure it's a different channel, and say, hey, I just got this request. Can you confirm this, right? If the request comes over the phone, email them, right? Email them. Just again, be in a different channel. Make sure that it's not you're not just talking to the same person, over the compromised email, or someone pretending to be your supplier on the phone, right? Again, double check. In order to do these attacks, of course, you have to be careful what you share. The more they know about you, the more they can use it against you. There have been attacks where the CEO of a company was impersonated, right? CEO, again, calls someone in accounting and finance and says, hey, I need to pay this invoice right away, right? Just I need it, right now, today, just work on it, drop everything what you've got, do this. And if they can have enough information to pretend to be the CEO, the more likely that attack is going to be successful, right? And also, I kind of mentioned this at the beginning, we need to be more careful and more suspicious. There's better and better technology out there that makes it harder and harder to kind of to separate, to differentiate between a real request and a fake one or a fraudulent one, right? There is technology out there that can mimic a voice, right? So you can use this technology, and you can make your voice sound like just about anyone else, right? You get a sample of that target person's voice, and as you speak in real time, it talks like that other person. Right? You hear about deep fakes. If you heard about those, you can do that with video as well, right? So you have to be careful. You see these videos of these celebrities saying things that that they would never normally say, because the technology is out there, that you can actually fool these people. Okay. So really want to reinforce, just giving a quick spattering of examples here. These are only the ones that were published, right? So we are all targets, big companies, small companies, individuals, anyone that's really connected, to the internet. Because in nowadays, I guess in the past, right? I mean, you were worried about the crook that would kind of drive a truck up to your property, break in, and take the things that you have, load it up into the truck, drive off, and steal, right? But now theft is completely different. Someone halfway around the world, can kind of just click their mouse button, kind of getting using some of the tools that they have there, and they can attack 1 million people just in a matter of seconds, right? So so we all have to be careful, because it's really easy for a cyber criminal to launch an attack. It's a lot harder for us to defend against those attacks. So that's why we do need to be educated. We need to be aware, and to be prepared as best we can. Okay. So just to kind of finishing off here, just kind of putting some resources out there. So Cybersecure Canada, it is a certification that you can get. And that goes through, I mean, it's 13 baseline controls, it is, but just 13 different areas that kind of goes through a questionnaire that says, have you thought about this? What is your plan to deal with this? Are you prepared for this kind of attack? Right. If you're interested in doing that, I mean, there's the link there. I mean, right, you can write these down. These are pretty short links to get to. And you even if you don't want to go through the whole certification, taking a few steps is better than not taking and than not being prepared. Right, go through the effort to learn about what is most likely to affect you. Cybersecure Canada, what they have done is they have worked with industry to try to put together using the 80-20 rule, right? What is the stuff that you can do that would be most impactful? We're not going to be able to help you kind of make yourself cyber intrusion proof, but what are the things that make you a hard target at least, right? At least make it so that the cyber criminals decide that it's going to be too hard. It's not going to be worth their effort to try to attack you. They're going to go attack someone else instead. Right. Similarly, get cyber safe. Just some good tips that are put together by the folks in the federal government on just little tips on what you can do to help keep yourself, your family, your business safe. And also, IRAP has actually worked with the Cybersecurity Industry Association called INSECM, and they do a monthly newsletter and a quarterly webinar. So if you're interested in just hearing what's going on, and again, just to be informed about the risks that are out there, what is going on, what is the latest thing, what are they doing to try to, how are they attacking, right? What are the trends in this? That would be a good thing to just sign up for that. Again, no cost to you for any of those, but definitely worth your effort to be educated and to take a few steps just to make it so that you are not the easiest target that these criminals are going to come across. Right, the more steps you can take, the better. And with that, thank you for your time. And Sarah and I are here to answer your questions now.
Great, thanks so much, Calvin. So first question for Sarah, you used a lot of production examples, but how do these ag tech and cybersecurities affect like the food processing sector?
Yeah, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Same concept. I did pick the production, but processing is the same idea. So if you manage processing times, what you're processing, any type of device that essentially gives you data and provides data back, and then if you use a dashboard or you're monitoring it via a cloud or internet connection, that would be considered IoT. And the same concepts apply, the same cybersecurity concepts apply. A lot of IoT has firmware on it that's not updated. There's a lot of default passwords that are on those IoT devices that are used that are simply posted online with operating manuals that bad actors can look up and grab the password, test it to see if the password's been changed. If it isn't, then they have the password to that device, which is connected to your network, which then has access into your network. Boom, I've got my ransomware injected. So same idea, same concept, just different types of what devices you're using. I hope that helps answer that question.
All right, and just a note for everybody on the webinar, if you have questions, please go to the top panel of your screen and click on the Q&A and send me your question. I have another question here. It has been noted in Canada that one of the biggest areas that can make a difference for a smaller company is ensuring all employees are more aware of cybersecurity and the company policies. What is something a small company can do to ensure that their employees are aware? And either Sarah or Calvin, you can answer that.
I get asked that question a lot. Cyber security or security awareness training it can be huge, it can be small. The idea here is to having first of all, have conversations with your staff or with whoever is in your organization. And I mean, the idea here is have the conversations, do lunch and learns, send out emails that say, hey, by the way, these are the latest cybersecurity breaches that we heard that were in the news. Did you know that they accessed this system through an email that a user clicked and linked on? So emailing out examples and news updates, desktop drops, one pagers that basically outline best practices and just creating that awareness on good behavior when it comes to letting people into your office for social engineering experiences. You have card locks, you have people who are coming in behind you, and you're like, well, I don't know, like, I guess they're okay because they're coming in behind me. There's no harm in saying, hey, can I help you? Do you work here? I haven't seen you before. You new? Or things like that. Questions to ask someone. And of course, knowing that there is a responsibility and due diligence that staff should have when it comes to handling your assets. And these are very valuable assets. So, creating that campaign, asking, sending out like surveys, or you can even buy packaged security training awareness modules that actually you can have your staff complete and then sign that they've or attested that they've actually completed them, and you have them do it on a yearly review or yearly cycle, so it's constantly just there is talk about it. There's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which is in October. Create a week of just, hey, we're celebrating, or we're not celebrating, but we're being hyper vigilant in making sure that our cybersecurity is on our minds, and that we just know that we are all responsible.
Yeah,
right.
I would agree with that. I mean, there are some tools you can get. I think the biggest thing you can do is to be prepared. I mean, to educate your staff, invest in those lunch and learns. There's a lot of those like the little small courses that you can do online. In terms of like some tooling, most of the one example I know that we do recommend is for email systems, right? If you have a company email system, usually there's a setting that says, put a warning if this email comes from someone outside of my company, right? Just something like that. And you've probably seen these in what's one of the replies, right? There's a warning at the top or something that's usually quite visible that says, warning, this email comes from someone outside your company. Right. And I mean, it may not prevent everything, and maybe you have a lot of contacts outside the company that you work with, so you see it a lot. But sometimes you'll get one where it's the email looks like it's from this person that but then you get the warning, right? And that one time where it happens will be worthwhile, because that'll save you from clicking on that dangerous link. There's also services that you can get that basically will train your employees by trying to trick them, right? So there will be, every so often, and we get this even at the NRC, we'll get an email that that is a carefully crafted email that if you click on the link, it'll say, ha ha ha, we got you. You shouldn't click on links like that, right? So it turns it into an educational moment, right? So and there are those kinds of tools, but really it's about preparation and training and education.
Excellent. Thank you
If
both. Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
just one thing I find is effective is, we do suffer from a lot of saturation. So our routine emails, blah, 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 blah. We want to just get the job done, and we want to save time. We just don't really want to think. Encourage some active participation. Ask, what would you do in this scenario? What do you think we can do to help protect ourselves? Get the feedback and incorporate those ideas into your security program. You'll find that you get a lot more buy-in that way than just kind of barfing out, the standard, here you go, thou shalt not do this, this, and this, and this. Those are still good. I'm not trying to downplay them, but I'm just saying that, we get very accustomed to doing routine stuff. So change it up, get creative, and keep the target in mind is that you just want to increase that security awareness and you want to make sure that you're being safe.
All right, thank you both, Sarah and Calvin. We have no further questions at this point, so I would just like to say a huge thank you, Sarah and Calvin, for sharing your knowledge with us today. It's very much appreciated. And thank you to everyone for joining us, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thanks, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.